Hello, dear friends and colleagues. Today I come to you to discuss a very important issue that seems to be getting more serious in the last few months. That is the trouble that we get into every time that we can not get to where we want to go because we have to catch a plane and flights seem to be delayed or canceled more and more. I have experienced terrible things in the last 3 or 4 months. I had a flight that was delayed for about 6 hours and made me lose my connection, and therefore I missed my first day of work, and that was just a couple of months ago. The reason for that was just that the plane had not left its original place of origin, and therefore it took it a long time to get where I was catching the plane so it could go back to its hub. This happened in Europe, so it's happening all over the place. Concretely, this was a flight from Rome to Madrid. I had then a second problem in Madrid as well, flying to Lisbon, where my flight was about 7 or 8 hours delayed because of the shortage of pilots. After that, the following 2 weeks went okay, and then I had a big catastrophe. I had a flight that left 6 hours late because the plane had a loose passenger seat. And this was a Sunday, and this was a small town in the United States, and they had to wait for the mechanic to come from home, fix the problem, and then we could go. That meant that I got home very late. This was fortunately on a Sunday night, and I didn't have work that night. But I went home, I got to my place very late, and therefore I was very tired to go to work the next day. Go 1 week later, and now I am at the airport in Chicago, ready to catch a flight to Miami, and the flight is again about, I would say, 4 or 4.5 hours late, because in this case, lack of crew. One of the pilots was not there, and they had to bring a pilot from somewhere else. Then we finally get on the plane, and then they made us the plane. Why? Because apparently there was a problem with some mechanical maintenance issue on the plane, and we had to get off the plane, and by the time they fixed the plane, I had missed my connection. I got to the next place, which was Miami, and then voila, I saw that I had not missed my connection because my next flight was delayed. My next flight was to Sao Paulo. Well, my flight to Sao Paulo never left that night. Why? First, because when the plane arrived from wherever it was coming from, there was a problem with the jetway that collapsed, and therefore the people that were on that plane could not deplane, and it took them about an hour to an hour and a half to move them to a different gate. By the time we got to the different gate and everybody got off the plane, guess what? The pilots couldn't fly anymore because their time schedule was up. So I had to stay there overnight, and therefore I had to miss another flight connection the next day in Brazil. So I stayed there that night. I had to get up very early in the morning. The flight was supposed to leave about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And in reality, the flight didn't leave until about noon. Why is that? Because once again, we were one pilot short and the plane could not leave that way. This put us late in Sao Paulo, where I had to catch my next flight. And I had to spend the night there. At the next flight scheduled for my connection, which was to Montevideo, I had another problem because the flight that would let me get to Montevideo in time for work was sold out. There was no room. So they were going to put me on another flight that was that evening. This was unacceptable to me. I had already switched my hotel reservations because I was missing my one night there because of the fact that I had to spend a night in Brazil. So finally, after a long negotiating period, they agreed to change me to a different airline and put me on a plane that would put me in Montevideo just on time to get going. So I got there with a few minutes to spare, but I finally made it, although I was absolutely exhausted. All of these things happened within a month. And what this teaches me is that nowadays, when we plan a trip for work, we have to factor all these things in: shortage of crew members, low maintenance on the planes because the fleets are getting older, and with the problems that Boeing has, we know it's not going to be any time soon before they get more newer planes. And now we have the weather, because winter is coming in. So we have to be very careful, and I have decided that I have to plan ahead and perhaps take 2 days or even 3 days before the assignment or after the assignment before I book a different assignment, a second assignment, because there's just too much uncertainty around airplanes right now. So my friends, please take this into account. Number one, so that you can meet your professional commitments. Number two, so that you can keep your sanity and your mental health, and also your physical health. And number three, so that you can talk this to your clients, because you have to factor all these things when you are working on your budget, when you're talking about your fees. Anyway, please be careful. If you work mostly on the road, if you travel mostly by plane, and it doesn't matter where, but mostly in the United States and Western Europe, please be aware of all these problems and always factor them in. At least, that is my opinion. Thank you very much.